At this time, I'd like to call the Town of Nashville Council meeting to order for the August 15th, Tuesday, August 15th. So would you please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Father, again tonight we invite you to our meeting to give us your wisdom and your knowledge and to lead us and guide us in making the right decisions for all the citizens of Nashville. Okay. At this time, we'll move on with our approval of the minutes for August 1st, 2023. Having read those, did you find any corrections? If there were no corrections, do I hear a motion for us to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. And I need to let you know that Councilman Larry Taylor is out tonight because of some medical issues that he's having to deal with. So say a prayer for him. Okay, it is now time for our public comments. And so at this time, Anna Joyner. And she gets 6 minutes because she's speaking about 2 topics.
Hi, my name is Anna Joyner. I live at 806 South Creek Drive. I've been a Nashville resident for 32 years, and I've been a realtor for 30. And it came to my attention this week that, from a reliable source, that yet another historic house in Nashville may be torn down. And that upsets me tremendously. It's actually one at 111 South Hilliard Street, built in 1903, among Nashville's finest Queen Anne hip roof residences. This dwelling is distinguished by a corner porch gazebo with a low cornical roof. I don't know if y'all know this, but we have a historic district in Nash County. We are on the National Register of Historic Places. We had over 100 homes that was on this registry. This is a fabulous book, if y'all ever seen it, The History and Architecture of Nash County. I got this from Nash Arts. It's $12. And if you look at Nashville in here, you will cry. Many of the homes in this book have been torn down. And it upsets me as a realtor, and as someone has invested so much time in our city, to see houses torn down, especially in the historic district. The local historic designation is the conservation and preservation of historic districts and landmarks to stabilize and increase property values in this area and to strengthen the overall economy. The designation is an honor for communities. And there are tax credits for historic homes if you renovate them. There are several homes in the district that are crumbling. One is on Church Street, 201 Church Street. Y'all know the one. Oh, it's also in here. It's a historic house. A neighbor bought it, apparently, and they have done nothing. The Rick's Bachelor Home, 201 East Church Street, crumbling to the ground. It's looking terrible. I personally don't think 111 South Hilliard Street looks bad because I've renovated a lot of homes. I don't know what the plan is. I've heard from 2 sources. They're going to tear it down and put up a parking lot, or they might renovate it. What is Nashville known for? We're known for what? Our people, our beautiful historic district, our beautiful trees on Main Street. I just hate to see another house torn down. There's also one on Collins Street that is in bad disrepair. My business as a realtor, and I'm sorry, I have renovated over 10 houses in Nashville to bring them back up to par. And I just wanted to ask, and my point is, what are we going to do about this? We have a grass ordinance. Grass gets this high, you get a nasty gram. Can we not do anything about deteriorating houses to protect them, to protect our historic district? Anyway, that's that one right there, and I know I'm out of time, so I'll go to the next topic. My next topic is, last year I came to y'all about this time, and I complained and gave y'all pictures about 10 cars being in the front yard of several properties in Nashville. I'm getting ready to list a property in Woodfield. The 10 cars are still there. Have y'all done anything? Is there any kind of ordinance y'all can have? That upsets me as well, that I'm going to list a house and probably bring it down about 40 grand because they're going to have to look over at the 10 cars parked in the front yard like a parking lot. So I just wish that we could do something about crumbling historic houses in the historic district and cars that deteriorate and ruin the value of homes in Nashville. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is and we have another person that signed up, but we're going to let you wait and speak when we get to that topic, please. The Fire Station 2, Randy, I'm going to let you discuss that.
Sure. So as we move forward with our application to the Local Government Commission for our borrowing application for Fire Station 2, we are required to hold a public hearing, and we have that on the agenda tonight to do that on two things. One is a public hearing on our application to the LGC for permission to borrow up to $3 million for Fire Station 2. And the other item is a revised land lease agreement for Fire Station 2. So I guess I would recommend we hold one public hearing for the borrowing application to the LGC, and then a second public hearing after that on the lease. And then once those are closed, if you have questions regarding either of those, then we can get into them, so to speak.
Do I hear a motion that we open a public hearing for the borrowing of the money for the LGC, from the LGC for our firehouse?
Second.
All those in favor? At this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak concerning this matter? If not,
this might be the appropriate time for our finance director to inform the public
okay, that'll
of
be
the
good.
bank bids that we got for the borrowing. Now, I don't believe we need to borrow a full $3 million. We have the earmark from former Congressman Butterfield. So, John?
We received two bids back to borrow up to $3 million. That just means we can borrow any amount between $1 and $3 million. The low bid was 4.45% to be paid over the course of 20 years. It'll be about $4.4 million in total, including interest.
Thank you. Any questions for John from the council or anybody else? Okay, if we have no input, do I hear a motion that we come out of the open public hearing concerning the borrowing of the LGC funding?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Now do I hear a motion that we go into a public hearing concerning the lease of the property for the firehouse?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak or have any comments concerning that? The land leasing? If not, do I hear a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Open public hearing, excuse me. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, any questions for John for any of this?
Mayor, would the council like to make a motion with regard to the bank bids we got, of which one you'd like to pursue?
Okay, we,
There were two. One was for Capital One. They gave us two offers. One was for 20 years, and that would be at a rate of 5.28%. The other one was for 15 years at a rate of 5.2%. And the other was from Providence Bank at a 20-year rate at 4.45%. I would recommend the 4.45%.
do I hear a motion for us to proceed with the borrowing at the 4.45% interest?
Move to proceed with the borrowing at 4.45% with Providence Bank.
Providence Bank. Is there a
Pending
second?
LGC approval.
Yes.
Yes, pending LGC approval.
Yeah,
Second.
and they will GC. I was going to do it separate, but that's fine. Okay, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
So we've approved both of those, so we're ready to go. The next item on our agenda is old business, the fishing and boating on Western Avenue Pond.
Mayor, would you mind having a discussion about the revised land lease for Fire Station 2?
Oh, that's right, I forgot all about that. I pulled it out of its place. Okay, let's go for that.
So we have our attorney here this evening, and if you've had a chance to look at what we had and what we have, you can see Raz pretty much rewrote the whole thing.
Right.
He did that. Raz, I'll let you take it away. Maybe a summary of the differences, or
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, we've discussed this previously. The lease you have before you is the finished document, the final document, final proposed document. It has been sent to the attorney for the landowner, for Mr. Rose's company. We have not gotten feedback yet, but generally, the landowner had represented to us that he was very willing to meet the city's terms. He was interested very much in having this project move forward. If the town would be willing to accommodate his desire to defer any possible closing on the property just because of his own tax and financial situation. So that's the history for the lease. Previously, we talked about the lease with purchase option, one alternative being a 50-year lease, a long-term lease. We also suggested that we might consider a short-term lease because of feedback that we've received from the local government commission that the long-term lease might be troublesome in their view. We've had further feedback. We don't have the final word whether it would be to the town's advantage to have a short-term lease alternative. It would be exactly the same. It would simply be more of a short-term lease with the understanding that before, the term would be 9 years and 11 months. I'm sorry, 4 years and 11 months. Before the end of that term, the town would certainly want to exercise the purchase option because there'll be a very expensive building on a piece of property that has a relatively insignificant value compared to the improvements on the land. So those options are still on the table. The terms of the proposed lease are exactly the same. It's simply a matter of whether you look more at an honest-to-gosh long-term lease for 50 years with a purchase option being triggered after 7 at the town's option, of course, or the shorter-term alternative that looks more like an installment purchase agreement that the town would exercise a purchase option sometime during the front end of that 4-year, 11-month lease, or sometime during that 4-year, 11-month lease term. Sounds complicated. The terms are all the same. It's just whether you're going to go short shrift or whether you're going to allow the town to have up to 50 years as lessee on the property. Gotten good feedback from the attorney for the property owner, but of course it's not a sealed deal yet, but we have to have this to be ready to go to the LGC in September.
Any questions, thoughts?
I would just ask, based on your conversations with the LGC and your conversation, or rather your knowledge of contract law, I think all of the changes that have been made are in the town's best interest. It's your recommendation that we move forward with the contract that we have.
Yes, it is. It is very favorable to the town. We're providing for a capital reserve fund to answer any objections by the LGC that the town is getting overly extended financially and needing to buy the property without a source of capital. So a capital fund is being set up at the inception of the lease, and it will be annually enhanced. So there will be a dedicated fund for the town to exercise its purchase option at such time as the town is authorized when the option is triggered, which in a long-term lease is after 7 years. Of course, at any time during a lease, if the property owner makes overtures that the property owner is willing to close on a sale at any time, if it's mutually agreed upon, of course, a closing could happen earlier than 7 years. But otherwise, it's very beneficial to the town. These are not business terms that you find in normal commercial leases, which tend to be very favorable to the landlord and not to the tenant. These are very favorable to the tenant. This proposed lease is.
Well, thank you for all the time that you've put in working with this, because I know you've put lots of hours, but we're gonna get that fire station.
Randy, when will this be presented to the LGC?
September 12th. And John's looked at the meeting agendas, and they're usually wrapped up by about 2:30. So we also have a meeting scheduled for that night. So John and I should not have a problem getting back from Raleigh for our meeting that night.
Only come back with good news. No, I'm just teasing. But anyway, thank you so much, and I pray that we can move forward with this. Now let's move on to our old business, the fishing and boating on Western Avenue Pond. Corey, talk to us first, and then we'll let Cindy.
Mayor, before you do that, back to the last item, there was a resolution, 2332, authorizing.
Let me
the
move back
application.
over to that page. I'm all mixed up
You
here.
just get a motion and a second.
Okay, I
to-
see that now. Do I hear a motion for the resolution 2023-32 that authorized an application to Local Government Commission, LGC, for approval of a land lease? Second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Keep me straight.
Mayor, if I may, the LGC approval is with respect to the borrowing of money as well. So it's as to the loan as well as the lease. So the resolution should also reference not just the land component, but also the financing part.
Okay, can we? That's what I thought. Do we? Yeah, we did.
So
pass.
long as
Okay.
we've got a resolution covered,
Yeah,
that's
we
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Good evening, Mayor
Good
and
evening.
Council. At the July 11th council meeting, discussion was held concerning fishing at two town-owned ponds. One of them that we're going to discuss first is the pond on Western Avenue that we've been calling the Smith Pond. At that time, that agenda item was tabled to allow staff to investigate the issue further regarding safety and liability. So on July 26th, we did meet with Matt Reed, who is a risk control consultant for the NC League of Municipalities. Ms. Reed did have some suggestions for us to limit liability, which included installing signs that say no swimming and installing some type of barrier around the pond. That barrier, the way we envision it, would be like just 4x4 posts with a rope draped between them, just something to stop a stroller or something from rolling into that pond, give somebody time to get there. Boating was not recommended on the pond, and mainly that was the concern of having issue just on the Western Avenue side and having people trying to launch boats onto the pond so close to Western Avenue, which we know is a busy road, and it's just going to get busier throughout the years. So given that information, we did reach out to NCDOT to see if they would permit us to have an improved parking area there on Western Avenue, in between Western Avenue and the pond. And they would allow us to do that. They would need to see, before they could give approval, a site plan and a driveway permit for here
that he could do a site plan, but there were concerns that he felt the town should be aware of. And that when we learned that NCDEQ, with that pond ultimately flowing into Stony Creek, it has same buffer restrictions and requirement as Stony Creek does. So there is a zone 1, zone 2 buffer. Zone 1 is within 30 foot, and there's no impervious surface within 30 foot. And 50 foot, you have to be 50 foot away from that water's edge, have a parking lot. So if you measure from the widest part there, from the water's edge to the white line on the road, is exactly 50 foot. So doesn't leave us a whole lot that we can do there. It is still possible. It would take some permitting, some site plan engineering to essentially fill in a part of the pond, figure out a way to put that parking there. Obviously, none of that is something that can be done quick or cheap. So given this information, tonight, the docket can choose whether or not to allow fishing on the town's property there along Western Avenue, even though we cannot make many improvements to that area quickly. And if it is the desire of the council, we can also proceed with trying to find grant funds to see if later on down the road we can make some improvements to increase public access there. And I do also want to point out, as I did last meeting, in the 2022 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that fishing access was very high on the list.
Our citizens would like to see increased in town. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have on the Smith Pond.
So basically, nothing can be done right now because it takes money.
Correct. We can still make a determination, since the question's been brought to the council on whether or not fishing is allowed. We can still allow bank fishing, if that's a desire of the council. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of open shoreline there to allow that. And with those riparian buffer requirements, it limits how much of that vegetation we're able to trim around the pond as well. So it makes it very difficult for us to open up access. There is a document I found from the state that's North Carolina Admin Code 2B0734 that goes into protection and maintenance of existing riparian buffers. And it does sound like that we can apply for authorization from NCDEQ. Whether or not they would allow that, I'm not sure. I believe that they would probably allow us to trim some of the vegetation, as long as we don't remove like any of the trees or anything like that. So we can certainly pursue that as well.
And there are a couple of spots, right, where it would be wide enough between trees to do a little trimming of vegetation. I think they're kind of already beaten down a little bit right now.
Yes, ma'am. There are some areas where you could get in there and cast. It's not ideal, but you could fish there if you wanted to.
Okay, Cindy, let's hear from you.
I'm representing Deborah and Robert Smith.
Okay, state your name and address, dear. State your name and address.
I'm Cindy Shipers. I live at 622 Western Avenue in Nashville. I'm going to read this letter that she has written. She says, "Hey to everyone. The only public access to the pond for public fishing is on Western Avenue, also known as Highway 64 Business or alternate Highway 64. This is a 2-lane highway, not a residential street. It is high traffic with cars, trucks, and 18-wheelers traveling by this access to the pond. The access is at a particularly busy area with not only highway traffic, but 2 subdivisions feeding to just east and west of the access. Dussall's Barbecue and Westgate Apartments are across the highway, with their traffic coming and going very close to the access. The EMS station is just up the hill, and the commercial park is adjacent to the EMS station, with emergency vehicles, employees, and commercial traffic feeding into it less than 1/4 mile away. It is not a safe location for a recreation area.
The residents of Lakeview Drive, Lake Valley Drive, and Haley Drive enjoy a quiet neighborhood environment currently. If fishing is allowed in the backyards of these residents, their quiet neighborhood or homes will surely be disrupted. Even though there are proposed rules for no loud or boisterous behavior, if it is a recreation area, there will be loud and boisterous behavior. Some of us have lived on the pond for a long time, and there are some people that come and ask permission to fish, clean up their trash, and respect the catch and release rule. Most often, however, people trespass on private property without permission, block highways, play loud music, and leave trash in our yards, and take all the fish, no matter the size or the state of the row. I understand how residents deserve a recreation area where they can enjoy the outdoors. It should not be at the expense of residents adjacent to the pond. The agenda issue document suggests the possibility of a barrier to be installed on the pond for safety. There would be for those who obey rules, not for those that are out to have a good time. And if I read the document correctly, there's no funding available for any improvements such as a barrier. There is also a great blue heron colony that resides at the pond. It is a federally protected species according to NC Wildlife Resource Commission website. Attached is a picture taken Monday morning, 8/14/23, showing one of the herons sitting in the area that has been proposed for fishing. Did any of you know this colony exists, and what steps will be taken to preserve their habitat at the pond? The shoulder of the highway is currently a grassy area. It is not meant to be an ingress or egress into the highway. The agenda document mentions improvements could be made to the shoulder of the highway to accommodate parking, and that a 50-foot barrier to the pond is required because of runoff into the pond and ultimately Stony Creek. It also states the shoulder to the highway is only 50 feet wide. How can parking be improved to meet that requirement if the shoulder is only 50 foot wide? For these reasons, please consider denying the request for fishing and boating at Smith Pond. Thank you, Deborah and Robert Smith.
Thank you very
And
much.
you do get the pictures.
Yeah, we did. Thank you very much. Okay, council.
Mayor, I think you have somebody in the audience that would like to speak, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
My name is Oliver Stanley, and I stay on 607 Lakeview Drive, and I've been there for 4 months. And just with the people that come in and out now, I've had problems. I've had people shooting at beavers, shooting through my window. I've had people throw trash. I pick up more trash behind people than I do two-year-olds, and I've had stuff get missing out of my backyard. What am I going to do to be protected? That's all I want to know.
So they're coming to your backyard?
Yes, ma'am,
to
and
fish.
I've called the police 4 or 5 times, and I don't mind you fishing, but when they leave their trash. I've stepped on hooks. I mean, I've had lawnmowers that were tore up because I've gotten fishing string in them. I mean, and it's just, if you start letting more people come, I think I'll have these problems much more.
I guess my question, you can't really answer, Cindy, because you're not the actual residents, but in hearing these, I think we have to go one of two ways. One is to not allow fishing at all, but then that excludes residents from fishing as well. The second thing is to open up the 2 parts on Western to make it more desirable for people to be fishing on Western instead of people's backyards, and state the rules. Because if it's already happening where they're parking and going into people's backyards and they're leaving trash and you know not releasing what they caught, there's no rules in place. So if we had rules that stated you have to do these things, you have to pick up after yourself, you can't go onto private property, whatever it is, that might actually help the current situation.
I mean,
But it would be
right.
no parking on that western bank. It'd have to be no parking, but kind of,
Right, and everybody that I've had to call the police on, they don't know, they know they're on property, but they say they're fishing on a city lake. But you come on private property, you fish on a city lake. How's that work?
right.
So, I mean, I get it, yeah, if you can stay out there and fish, that's fine, I have no problem with that. But when I leave home and I got just my wife and my two youngins there, I don't want anybody running around in my backyard. And that's just for safety reasons.
Are your neighbors finding that
Oh,
happens
yes,
to
ma'am.
them too?
Oh, yes, ma'am. And that was my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So do you have any questions for Corey or any? What are your thoughts?
Well, right now, it sounds like there's no place to park safely.
Correct.
And we know at some point, Western Avenue, which is a state-owned street, will be widened probably.
Yeah, it does make it difficult. I mean, the ideal thing in my mind would be to have a nice fishing pier there where you have, a public area to fish with good access. And obviously that's not something that we can do overnight, and it's not something that comes with no price tag. That's why in the agenda report I'd put that we would love to continue to pursue funding opportunities and ways to see maybe a feasibility study to get that site plan done to see if it's feasible to do any type of parking or improvements there.
As she suggested, is there any way we could put up rules now to keep them from going on people's properties, such as he was talking about?
Yes, ma'am. I think there are things that we can do now. Obviously, I think we will need to put up no parking signs, no swimming signs. I think we could also go to the sides of the pond and put no fishing beyond this point. Again, we are relying on people to read those signs and follow the rules, but I do think all of that would help. And of course, if we develop a set of rules as well, and we can post that as well.
I'm guessing too, people are going onto the private property because the access is so limited on Western. Where if we could get a waiver to just clear out a little bit of vegetation to make that a clearer casting point, then they would be more likely to use that point instead of private property, maybe?
Correct, and it does seem like, the best I can tell, there is not a fee for us to apply for that authorized use from NCDEQ, so we can go through that and just see what they say. Not being through that process before, I'm not sure how strict they are on that. I would assume allowing public recreation opportunities would be one reason that they allow you to clean up some of that vegetation and again keep all the trees and stuff like that.
I'm concerned where individuals that would use it for fishing right now where would they park?
Right. And I guess my question is, where are they currently parking? Because it is already happening.
Right.
So I don't know where they're currently parking or where they would park.
Right there, where you're standing 50 feet at,
Mm-hmm.
that's where
They're pulling in there, off the road. Okay.
So what we are to address is whether we want to allow fishing in the Smith Pond from Western Avenue and pursue a grant funding for access improvements of the Western Avenue.
Do we want to have this on another agenda one more time, just to get some public input from the homeowners and the people who want to fish it? To see, because if we say no fishing at all, that means the residents cannot fish it either.
Right.
And so if that's the alternative, the residents might say, yes, let's try to get some public access going on Western. Or they might say no fishing at all, in which case people who want to fish it might have a good argument for why they should be able to. So maybe we want to gather a little bit more information.
Till next meeting.
Would that work? Yeah. And maybe, Coy, you can figure out how likely it would be for us to be able to get that, or if there's no fee, maybe even apply for it, and maybe that's another thing we have in our pocket, whether we can or can't do that, because if we can't, then there's no point in moving forward with it anyway.
We can do that.
So you want to put that in the motion to table?
So moved.
All those in favor? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to fishing on Forest Hill Cemetery Pond.
So very similar, this was the other pond we discussed at July 11th, and I did want to put them on separate agenda reports this time because I did feel like the information for both was a little bit different. Matt Reed from the league had very similar recommendations to limit liability, which included installing some signs that say no swimming, installing the same border with rope, and that barrier doesn't have to go all the way around the pond if we wanted to limit it to the side that's actually fished, and again put up signs that say no fishing beyond this point. We can certainly do that. I didn't include boating in here. With that pond being smaller in size and in the cemetery, I wasn't sure if that's something that the council wanted to allow there. So giving that information, we have developed a draft set of rules. And again, this is more to make sure that fishing takes place in a respectful manner in regards to being in the cemetery operations, and the like. So our recommendation, so our current ordinance, section 10-5, does prohibit fishing specifically. So our recommendation would be to strike fishing out of the ordinance there and replace boating, and to allow fishing at the cemetery pond between dawn and dusk, and obviously not whenever services are going on.
Corey, how close is that pond to actually cemetery plots? Because I had a lady contact me concerned about it being near where her family was buried or something.
So I know we haven't plotted out a lot of the sections near the cemetery. On the other side of the drive through there are some plots there. I would say the closest one may be 50 yards from the edge of the pond.
But it's on the other side of that roadway.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they have suggested that we approve ordinance 2023-17. Do I hear a motion to do so?
I have one suggestion. In the ordinance where it says no person shall intentionally disrupt any funeral service, I would just take out intentionally. I don't want to have to prove
Isn't that
prove
the truth?
intent. Right, so just no person shall disrupt any funeral service. And this doesn't have to go into the ordinance, but I'm assuming we can post a sign of, clean up after yourself, catch and release, all of that language posted somewhere
Yes,
near
ma'am. And
there,
that was the intent of the draft rules,
the
was to
back
post that on a
Okay.
sign there.
Perfect.
I didn't think those needed to go in the ordinance like you said, but.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the ordinance 2023-17 with those, adjustments that you've suggested? Is there a second? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Now we'll move on to our new business. The first item on our agenda is the Nashville Business Center Shell Building. Randy?
Mayor and council, as you know, we've been approached by Nash County Economic Development to partner with them in building a 40,000 square foot shell building in the Nashville Business Center on lot number 3. We've been fortunate enough to get some Golden Leaf money to remove the trees and stumps from that property and lot number 4, which sits closer to Western Avenue. And we've also recently been approved $430,000 to do rough grading. That rough grading, as you heard at the last meeting, will make the lot building ready. So the next step in pursuing such a venture with Nash County is an interlocal agreement, which is in the packet. And per the agreement, the town will provide the land for the shell building. Nash County will build the shell building. Any proceeds from the sale of that shell building by Nash County will be used to develop additional lots and infrastructure within the town for additional shell buildings or economic development. I think the agreement also allotted, if there's another area that you would like to, it could be a different area outside of town, provided the council agreed to that. So, town attorneys had a chance to take a look at this agreement. His recommendations have been incorporated. So on pages 79 through 82 is the actual agreement. And with that, I'll open it up to discussion to the council.
How many acres are in that lot?
So on that lot 3, what's developable is just shy of 5. Altogether, I think it's close to 7 acres.
Okay.
One thing to point out to you, and I don't know if I put it in the packet, is the site plan for the shell building as it's proposed is on page 78. And that is going to require a lot line be adjusted at some point in the future. This is how the lot was platted in 2000. In 2007, the town must have had a prospect for the south lot, and it needed more. So that lot line was moved to the other side of the lane, north of the lane, going to the fire station, or I'm sorry, the water tower, making the south lot larger than the north lot. And maybe that's where you were going with that question, Louise, I don't know. But the developable area of lot number 3, as it's shown on that site plan, is around 5 acres.
And are they developing all 5 of those acres?
We only have to develop enough to get that 40,000 shell foot building on it with the parking and loading docks that you see there. So yes, it's approximately 5
Close to
acres
that,
of that
okay.
7-acre lot.
Has Nash County reviewed the interlocal agreement? Do we know if they have?
They have. They were going to have it on their meeting agenda for today, but they deferred for the council's review first, and they'll have it on their September meeting agenda. So if there's anything you want tweaked or changed on here, in here, and throw it out, and we'll pursue it with Nash County.
So I don't think you incorporated any of the changes that I spoke to you about, Randy, right?
Yeah, but if you wanted
Okay.
to mention those.
So I just noticed that there was nothing in there about a time frame for when the shell building has to be constructed. So as it stands, and I know this would not actually happen, we would convey the property, and year after year, it could be like, oh, we're working on it, we're going to do it. It could be 100 years before we actually get a shell building. There's nothing that holds anyone to do it. So I just wanted to have a reasonable time frame, you know, whatever the county thinks is reasonable, what we think is reasonable, to just say the shell building needs to be completed by X date. And maybe some benchmarks in there too. And then the second thing is what will happen if the building is not built within that time period. And so my suggestion, and I'm not sure if it's allowed, but we'll defer to Raz, is to have the property revert back to us if the shell building is not constructed within 3 years or whatever the time frame is that we state. So if you want to speak to that.
Certainly, those are certainly legal provisions. The review that we made of this agreement was mostly to suggest a few things to be added to make the agreement meet the standards of the interlocal agreement statute that has some very specific requirements. And I didn't discuss with the county attorney the business terms. He you know, I think those were all very reasonable suggestions as to business terms. I suspect the county may say that this is, you know, they have the economic development funding and a full-time staff for that, so they are sort of the sponsor of this project. But in as much as present the town owns this lot, I think it's reasonable to expect that if there's not progress shown within some amount of time, that that title should revert back, because obviously the town's going to be spending money on having it upfitted and the pad installed
Right, and
and pre-development work
For every
taken
year
care
that it doesn't generate tax revenue, that's something that we're missing out on. So obviously, we want that as quickly as possible. Then the other one is in paragraph 3B. I know that it says that they agree to review and discuss all development plans and shell building construction plans with the town of Nashville prior to proceeding. And I just wanted to add to that, and to receive and incorporate any reasonable suggestions or input from the town. So obviously, we can't, ask for something that's going to be $1 million improvement over what they were planning on doing, but if it's just reasonable suggestions, to incorporate those suggestions. And then I just verified with Randy, so I'll just put it out there for the public record. Water and sewer, we're already good with that provision of number 4. And then on A, B, and C, I just wanted to clarify those, where it says the town of Nashville agrees to maintain adequate flows and pressures within the park so as to encourage industrial development. We're good with that for the foreseeable future. Then the town of Nashville agrees to work with natural gas provider to provide natural gas services to all companies located within the business park. That we have gas that goes to the business park, but I want this paragraph to clarify that while we will work with the provider, it is the business owner's responsibility to get it from the road or wherever it caps off to the actual building itself. And then on C, the same thing, that the town of Nashville agrees to work with Duke Energy to install underground electric service lines to all companies located within the park. Again, that makes it sound like we are going to provide it to the building, and we're not. It's already to the business center, and then the owner is responsible to get it from wherever it's capped to the business. And that's it for.
Great points. Can we approve that resolution with these changes? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Did you have any more comments?
Well, have we stated a time frame that we want?
I guess I know the county wants it done yesterday, but I don't know what they're going to think is reasonable.
If the staff and your council could have a little bit of flexibility, because I've had several conversations with the county attorney, and they're very reasonable, but sometimes lawyers can want to wordsmith it to death, and they might, the very particularly concerning design control, they might say, well, unless the town suggestion is unreasonable, the town has veto authority over the design, and so we might want to use some softer language about reasonable consideration of all input offered by the town, or something like that.
Sure.
If you can give us a little flexibility, if you have in your mind what time period you're thinking of, that sort of reflects market conditions and how well those things, those projects move forward on your commerce park, as your commerce park. That would decide whether, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, what would be appropriate.
About December 31st of 2025.
That's 2.5 years.
Yeah, that works.
To get
And
started,
if not, then
To be finished.
to be finished.
property reverts back to the town.
Right. And just let us know if there's any other suggestions that the county has that does not meet that.
Certainly will.
So do I hear a motion to approve the resolution 2023-33 and the interlocal agreement between the town of Nashville and Nash County for 40,000 square foot shell building on Lot 3 of the Nashville Business Center with the appropriate changes as suggested by Councilman Burns? Second? Okay, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Thank you so much. And the next item on the agenda is Chief of Police Winstead. If you'd come forward, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have the curfew ordinance for juveniles, and Raz sent it back, and it was just a couple word tweaks for his and her, adding it in there and taking out shall and replacing shall with something else. I'm gonna
May.
pull up my phone
May.
and tell you exactly what it was supposed to be. But other than that, the curfew is supposed to be for our abundance of juveniles that walk up and down the streets and do things. Now we have our hands tied of what we can and cannot do with them. But this curfew would allow us to take them home, make their parents in charge of them, and if the parents didn't choose to do that, then there would be fines and penalties that the town, we could put on the parents to have them be responsible parents and not just let their children wander away during night.
Any comments or questions for Chief Winstead? I think it's really a good idea because I've had concerns about juveniles wandering the streets, going in people's yards. So I think it's a good idea for the safety of the citizens of Nashville.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Like I said, we've had an uptick in it since about the first of the year, and it's just getting worse. And with the summertime, they still haven't gone back into the house yet. So I think this is a first
And
step
without
forward.
something like this, there's nothing you can do really, not even
ma'am.
hardly stuff.
Correct.
Okay, great. After reading this, do I hear a motion to approve ordinance 2023-16, establishing a curfew for persons under 18 in the town of Nashville?
So moved.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Now, how are we going to let the public know?
I've talked to, in the morning, I'll send Joanne an email, and she can kind of post it out. And I'm probably thinking that we try to push it on social media and everything, and then really start enforcing it September the 1st. That way it gives people at least
Okay.
20-some days to know that what we're trying to do.
Okay, great.
Mayor, the attorney has something.
Oh, excuse me, I didn't even.
That's all right. No, two things. One is I can't take credit for the last minute changes. They were suggested by Ms. Burns. They're excellent. It's good to having extra sets of eyes. We reviewed those. They're good amendments, actually. This is a new ordinance, and it makes provision for the possibility of a criminal enforcement option. And under the new state law regarding criminalization of local ordinances, an ordinance that provides for a criminal penalty, the possibility of a criminal penalty, cannot be adopted on the first occasion that it is before the council. In other words, it takes two readings. So if you'll vote for this again, if it's on the agenda next meeting and vote
Okay.
for it again, that'll take care of that little detail.
Our next meeting isn't until September, is it?
Right,
September 12th.
so I guess enforcement is going to happen maybe later than that. And can we start pushing it out in social media, at least to let the public know? So if anyone wants to speak to this, they are able to? Like saying that the council already said yes for the first time and one more time has to happen, this is what the ordinance will look like?
Yes, technically, you didn't have to take the vote today, but obviously, it's being seriously considered.
Okay.
The final vote will
So
be at the
seriously
next,
considered.
when it comes up.
Okay. So seriously consider it. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is Sean Lucas, Code Enforcement Officer.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. As you see, we have two houses before us today, and I was doing a ride around through town today, and I noticed that we're starting to get now on the second phase of houses from when I started, that we're getting ready to start looking at maybe doing demolition on that first phase were the ones that were kind of more blighted, that was eyesores in the neighborhood. So now we're going to the ones that the owners boarded up when we sent out notification 2 years ago, and they just kind of went in a standstill period. The first one we have is 818 Break Street. I believe Randy's already got that pulled up. Mr. Lance has that pulled up on the screen over there, projector screen. This house, I have spoke with the owner several times. She has made recommendations of wanting to fix the house back up, but since she's boarded up, it's still in the same situation. The biggest thing that we're concerned about is the safety hazard right on the back porch, where the whole back porch is missing. If anybody got around there, they could get hurt. So what I am requesting tonight from the council is to vote for us to send her a 60-day, another review process, which tonight we could do orders for demolition, but I think we should send her one more 60-day review process to let Ms. Burnett know that we are seriously considering on demolition of this home. I think if we do this can kind of get her family down here to maybe do some safety precautions to get it where at least it's safe, where we can kind of back off. But if not, we can move forward with it in October. I think we have a date slated for October 17th, 2023, if nothing's been done to do a ordinance of demolition on this property.
Thank you. So, council, do you approve a 60-day order to William and Christine Burnett to bring the house at 818 Break Street to an comfortable condition or remove it through demolition?
So moved.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. It is approved. Next.
Same
Sean.
one, the second one on 842 Brooklyn Boulevard. We reached out to Mrs. Anita Mabry. She's out in California 2 years ago. She had a family member that lives in Nashville to board the house up. Of course, after speaking with the family member, he's kind of tired of seeing the eyesore when he rides through the neighborhood. I sent letters out to her letting her know that we were getting ready to kind of bring this one back up. No response, first class and certified. So I'm thinking the same thing with this one. I think we probably would end up probably moving this one towards demolition in October due to nobody responding. I will, if we vote tonight for the 6-day review, talk to her nephew that did board it up for us and just see if he can make some contact with her. But last time I spoke with her, I think she was a little under the weather, not doing too well. So I think she was kind of just gonna let it play out however it plays out with the
Okay.
town.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve a 60-day order to David Lucas Ayers and Anita Mabry to bring the house at 842 Brooklyn Boulevard to an acceptable condition or remove it through demolition?
So moved.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will get letters sent out in the morning, get both properties posted with signage on them, let them know what's going on.
Thank you
y'all.
so kindly, Sean. The next item on our agenda is the Dollar General annexation.
Mayor and Council, we've received an annexation petition from Ronnie Burnett, the owner of the 2.5 acres on the northwest corner of Oak Level Road and East Old Spring Hope Road, that Gildan Forest Equity LLC is going to be developing a Dollar General store on. And he has submitted the attached non-contiguous annexation petition for the property. Per the annexation process of NCGS 168-58, the next step is for the council to direct the town clerk to investigate the sufficiency of this satellite annexation and report back to the council. We have in the packet also a resolution for the council to adopt, directing the town clerk to do that.
What is your desires, council?
Move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
So, we will approve resolution 2023-30 for the town clerk to investigate the sufficiency. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the appropriate resolution for the Governor's Highway Safety Program. JT Winston, the chief.
Back in 2020, we got a grant through GSHP, which gave us an officer and a vehicle and all the equipment in there. This is October, will be their last fiscal year from October to October. And this is just a resolution that's saying that they're paying $28,100 and some, and we're paying another half. And then after this fiscal year, the town is to absorb the full cost of the personnel and everything.
And what is that? What is the full cost?
Whatever at the time the officer salary will be and a replacement vehicle at that point in time.
Council, what are your thoughts?
Move to approve resolution 2023-31.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda, Mr. Joyner.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. We do have a couple personnel policy changes this time. First up is the employment of relatives policy. It was brought to our attention by an employee concerned. And we cleaned up some language in that policy, as you can see before you today. The main part in this section was to reword the family member portion of it, as well as remove the last statement, should an immediate family member of a town employee be elected to the town council, the employee shall resign within 6 months. We reworded that language to the town will not hire an immediate family member of a seated mayor or council member. And that's consistent with the top portion of our policy, that we wouldn't hire a relative of an employee in a supervisor position or within the same work unit in that chain of command. We also reworded the language for immediate family in the holiday and leave of absence section for sick leave, bereavement leave, and voluntary shared leave.
What prompted this?
We had a concerned employee reach out to us.
Who has a family member running for town council?
Pardon?
they have a family member running for town council, and our policy right now would state that that person would need to resign if the family member wins. And according to what we have read in state law, you cannot restrict elections in that type of like a coercive manner. And so we really shouldn't have something like this in our policy.
So this is accommodation for
No,
that person
No.
running?
No,
No, it's
this
not an
is to make
accommodation.
us within the laws of the state of North Carolina. It should never have been in there. But that was a good spin.
Any other questions?
Mayor, if I may, I responded to a request for some review and suggestions or comment by the manager on the policy, and I commented that the definition of immediate family member and relative was ambiguous. They were not consistent in the ordinance. The manual as it currently reads has those two different terms. I pointed out that that the provision as written could be subject to legal challenge either by an individual who would be considering running for public office for a council position, that individual would face the prospects that a family member might lose their job. Alternatively, there could be a legal challenge on behalf of the employee, subject to losing his or her job. The law, the provision as it is written is presumed to be valid. I'm not aware of any court decision that it is illegal as written. I have my own thoughts concerning whether a legal
I
challenge
can
would be
get you the
successful or
research.
not.
From my research, it is not allowed the way
Did
it's
you? Well,
written.
we have not researched it. We just reacted based on, one, the ambiguity, and two, some articles in the School of Government concerning qualifications for running for office being constitutional in nature. And if a town was going to impose additional requirements, this is an indirect sort of a requirement. It would be that it would subject a family member to losing his or her job. So it's based on the work we did, which was very cursory. We did not research whether this was, whether if there were a legal challenge, how we would weigh in on the odds of that challenge being successful or not. But it did strike us as being subject to challenge, and it struck me as being a little
But this
unusual.
will clarify that, right?
This would fix that.
Yeah, and I just want to make that clear. We had not done the work to disclose whether there is strong law that renders this illegal or not as it is written.
Is there any discussion from the council concerning this?
The only other thing that I would want to say is in the definition of family members or relatives, however it was throughout it, sick leave, bereavement leave, and voluntary leave, I agree that we should be adding all of those, the niece, the nephew, the grandchildren, the cousins, because if someone in your family dies, you want to be able to go to that funeral. If someone's sick and you're one of their primary caretakers, you want to be able to take that leave to take care of them. It's a little too inclusive, I think, in the running for election part here, where we wouldn't hire the cousin of a sitting mayor or the nephew of a sitting council person. And it includes like recreational aides. It includes volunteer firefighters. So I think we're going to be missing out on a pool of good candidates that are town citizens that would be able to have those types of jobs. So my suggestion would be to either say that we're not going to hire them for like supervisory roles, because our only employee, our two employees, are sitting right here. Everyone else who's in the town is an employee of Randy. So I would say, realistically, maybe we keep it so that we don't appoint someone to a supervisory role or a director role, but maybe we allow for either part-time or volunteer or lower level positions of relatives. And we can even keep it that, the nuclear family still can't. So it can't be a spouse volunteering for the fire department if we wanted to go that far. But again, in my opinion, we could keep it just as those higher level positions, we don't hire relatives, but otherwise it would be okay. That's just my opinion, so I wanted to throw it out there.
Matthew, did you get that?
check it out.
Got on recording if I forget.
Pardon?
So I got it on recording if
Okay,
I forget some
good.
of those parts.
So is there any other discussion?
The main thing, we want to avoid conflict of interest or any perception of conflict of interest. In a small town, it's very easy to have conflict, and so we need to keep that in mind.
Do you think keeping
Perception
it
of
to,
conflict of interest.
so like if my husband wanted to volunteer in the fire department, or if, 10 years from now, my daughter wants to work as a rec aide, do you think that presents the perception of a conflict of interest? Or like, what is your sticking point?
But when are you going to determine what's a lower level? And
Well, we can determine that right now. This is just my suggestion, and I'm not trying to say this in an ugly way at all. I want to know what your opinion is of this. And so if you wanted to be more stringent about it, that's fine. We can do that. Just what is our level where it looks like a conflict of interest?
Well, then you get into that debate of what is a lower level job,
Well, I think if we said anything that's not a supervisory position would be, we could say something even stricter than that. Or we can
But at
say
the same time, we'll lose out on a lot of good young people like
Qualified,
working with
right.
parks. Suppose your daughter wanted to work with parks, or your son or my son, if they were of age, why shouldn't they be allowed to do that?
Right.
If they,
I think we would be missing out on a pool of viable, wonderful candidates if we were this restrictive. I mean, it goes as far as cousins and nieces and nephews. That's pretty far removed.
Yes. I agree.
So I'd want to be inclusive to allow for leave and allow for things like that, but make it a smaller pool for who we won't hire.
Okay. Typically, nuclear family means mother, father.
Right. Spouse, you're right. Child.
You don't go aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews.
That to me is extended family.
Yeah.
So that's more true
Right.
definition of immediate family.
Right.
than-
When I see immediate family, I think nuclear family. And extended family to me defines all of those other things. So I almost wanted it to stay relative for the rest of the categories, because we are going outside of immediate family to define this. But I do want it to include all of those family members for our employees to be able to take leave to take care of them. But maybe keep immediate family in the section that applies to who we won't hire, and define that just as spouse, parents, children, and then say that we won't hire for any supervisory role.
well, should we table this, you think, and let him redo it and bring it back to us and,
Oh, no.
or
We have to
what?
at least, I think we have to at least,
Well, that
Approve
would-
it-
that would
approve
take
it.
To September 12th.
okay. Yeah, if we can approve it on September 12th, that would work.
All right. And as far as the immediate family, mother, father, spouse, and child, but no in-laws.
No, I guess you would, well, no, I mean, again, like when I think of immediate family, oh, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
keep it the way it is. Immediate family as defined.
Mayor, if I may suggest, I think it'd be wise to, just because of this conversation, to decide what group you want to cover and then define the term according to the group as you define it. I looked in the definitions, Webster's definitions, and the definition of immediate family was almost the same as relative in Webster's, which
Is it?
surprised me because I thought
Right.
immediate family was more like the nuclear family.
So then
but-
we can just
so
keep
you
the
probably
definition
need
as
to-
immediate family as is, but again, I would just change this portion. And if we want to keep immediate family in the, I don't know. I feel like it's just so far removed for cousins and nephews and things like that to not hire in a even supervisory role, but that's just me again. But if we wanted to keep it inclusive like this, just say for not supervisory role, and so you would allow family members in other positions.
So, where do we go from here? Do you want to approve the town's personnel policy with the changes that have been, where do we go, Raz, to stay right?
Well,
And
there,
legal.
there are two topics being addressed here. One was whether you wanted to repeal that provision that provided for an employee's losing their job 6 months after a relative or immediate family member happens to be elected to a council position. That's one proposal that is being changed. And the second is to clarify the definition of immediate family and relative. What was confusing was the first four sections of this manual dealt with the chain of command of administrative staff, dealing with those employees that had supervisory positions actually being responsive to the folks that were their bosses, having a relationship, a family relationship there. But then the final sentence, one used the term immediate family, and the rest of the section had been dealing with the term relative. Immediate family was defined somewhere else, far afield in the personnel manual, but in this section dealing with conflicts, it wasn't defined, so it was just ambiguous. So there's the definitional question, but there's also the question, the first point that appears in the workup, the agenda workup, whether you are amenable to repealing that part that says that the law applies, the rule applies retroactively. So if an individual is elected to council, the employee that is a relative of that newly elected council member loses their job. That's one topic being addressed. The other is the definitional question. What's the scope of the coverage of relative as opposed to immediate family? So I guess I was asking Randy if it was clear that the council was amenable to that first part of the recommendation, as well as clarifying those definitions, relative and immediate family. So that there are two issues there.
Two
There are
issues.
two recommendations that have been made. So I think probably it's important not to confuse those two.
Well, I agree with both of those recommendations. I think we have to repeal what was in the policy. I agree that we can keep the definition of immediate family if that's what Webster says. My recommendation would just be that when we state that we won't hire any immediate family members, it would just be for supervisory roles. But that is just my suggestion. So if you all can decide on whether you agree with that now, then we can do that now. Otherwise, we can mull it over and
What are your thoughts?
wait.
I can agree with that now. I'm fine with that.
There are a lot of positions that are not supervisory, though. That's the thing.
So where do you see there being a conflict of interest?
I just think we're opening up a can of worms. To determine who is a supervisor and who is not.
So do you want to just keep it at full-time employees? That way it could be part-time employees that we can hire family members, and volunteer positions we can hire family members.
Full-time employees.
Do I hear a motion that we approve this with the definition defined? Are we on the right track? And then with the, how would I word this?
The
With,
repealing of the current language
and then
and the
the,
replacement of the new language,
okay,
I think.
And applying only to full-time positions.
positions, right. Do I hear a motion? Is that a motion?
I'm making that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Oh, he's not here. Okay, the next item, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda, John O'Keefe.
So as you know, last year we budgeted to buy 7 police cars. 4 of those did not get delivered by 6:30, so they became 6 fiscal year 24 expenses. Budget amendment number 24 is appropriating $214,000 that was left unspent last year to this year.
Do I hear a motion that we approve this budget amendment?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Number 5 is the same thing, but for radios in the amount of $53,400.
Do I hear a motion to approve this? Amendment number 5.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Okay, audit and firm selection.
So our auditor informed us last week that she will be retiring and her firm is no longer doing governmental audits. Asked several firms if they would like our 23 audit and what their bid was. The low bidder was Thompson Price Scott Adams at a rate of $27,500.
And you said that was a good
That's a
company.
reputable firm. They do
Okay.
Nash County. They do a lot of governmental audits.
Okay, great, thanks. So do I hear a motion to approve the contract with Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams for our town audit?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, any comments from the council? Thank everyone so much for, yes,
One thing, it was, last council meeting, it was brought up about downtown, about the sidewalk, but, you know, some stuff
the
being down on the
space
side.
and everything, yeah.
So I went down there and I talked with all the, merchants down there. I expressed to them about the 36 inches had to be on the sidewalk so you could have clear clearance. I also talked to them about the, rail, making sure that they didn't put anything on the rail to impede somebody from being able to hold onto the rail. At the end where we have the handicap ramp going down, I made sure they understood that they had to keep that clear at all times for those accessible spots. But every one of them that I spoke to was very understanding of it. So that has been taken care of.
Thank you so kindly, appreciate it. If there are no other comments, do I hear a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.